Wordless 38. Key. Dock, landing place. Because of the captain's carelessness, the ship crashed into the quay. Queasy. Easily nauseated, squeamish. Remember that great chase movie, the one with the car-sick passenger? That's right, queasy rider. Quell. Extinguish, put down, quiet. Miss Minchin's demeanor was so stern and forbidding that she could quell any unrest among her students with one intimidating glance. Quench. Douse or extinguish, assuage or satisfy. No matter how much water the hiker drank, she could not quench her thirst. Querulous. Fretful, whining. Even the most agreeable toddlers can begin to act querulous if they miss their nap. Query. Inquiry, question. In her column Ask Beth, the columnist invites young readers to send her their queries about life and love. Quibble. Minor objection or complaint. Aside from a few hundred teensy-weensy quibbles about the set, the script, the actors, the director, the costumes, the lighting, and the props, the hypercritical critic loved the play. Quiescent. At rest, dormant, temporarily inactive. After the Great Eruption, fear of Mount Etna was great. People did not return to cultivate its rich hillside lands until the volcano had been quiescent for a full 2 years. Quietude. Tranquility. He was impressed by the air of quietude and peace that pervaded the valley. Quintessence. Purest and highest embodiment. Noel Coward displayed the quintessence of wit. Quip. Taunt. You are unpopular because you are too free with your quips and sarcastic comments. Quirk. Startling twist, caprice. By a quirk of fate, he found himself working for the man whom he had discharged years before. Quiver. Tremble, shake. The bird dog's nose twitched and his whiskers quivered as he strained eagerly against the leash. Quiver. Case for arrows. Robin Hood reached back and plucked one last arrow from his quiver. Secondary meaning. Quixotic. Idealistic but impractical. Constantly coming up with quixotic, unworkable schemes to save the world, Simon has his heart in the right place, but his head somewhere in the clouds. Quizzical. Teasing, bantering, mocking, curious. When the skinny teenager tripped over his own feet stepping into the bullpen, Coach raised one quizzical eyebrow, shook his head, and said, "Okay, kid. You're here, let's see what you've got." Quorum. Number of members necessary to conduct a meeting. The senator asked for a roll call to determine whether a quorum was present. Rabbit. Like a fanatic, furious. He was a rabid follower of the Dodgers and watched them play whenever he could go to the ballpark. Raconteur. Storyteller. My father was a gifted raconteur with an unlimited supply of anecdotes. Rail. Scold, rant. You may rail at him all you want, you will never change him. Raiment. Clothing. How can I go to the ball? Asked Cinderella. I have no raiment fit to wear. Rally. call up or summon forces, vital powers, etc., revive or recuperate. Washington quickly rallied his troops to fight off the British attack. The patient had been sinking throughout the night, but at dawn she rallied and made a complete recovery. Ramble. Wander aimlessly, physically or mentally. Listening to the teacher ramble, Judy wondered whether he'd ever get to his point. Ramification. Branching out, subdivision. We must examine all the ramifications of this problem. Ramify. Divide into branches or subdivisions. When the plant begins to ramify, it is advisable to nip off most of the new branches. Ramp. Slope, inclined plane. The house was built with ramps instead of stairs in order to enable the man in the wheelchair to move easily from room to room and floor to floor. Rampant. Growing in profusion, unrestrained. The rampant weeds in the garden choked the flowers until they died. Ramshackle. Rickety, falling apart. The boys propped up the ramshackle clubhouse with a couple of boards. Rancid. Having the odor of stale fat. A rancid odor filled the ship's galley and nauseated the crew. Rancor. Bitterness, hatred. 30 years after the war, she could not let go of the past but was still consumed with rancor against the foe. Random. Without definite purpose, plan, or aim, haphazard. Although the sponsor of the raffle claimed all winners were chosen at random, people had their suspicions when the grand prize went to the sponsor's brother-in-law. Rankle. Irritate, fester. The memory of having been jilted rankled him for years. Rant. Rave, talk excitedly, scold, make a grandiloquent speech. When he heard that I totaled the family car, Dad began to rant at me like a complete madman. Rapacious. Excessively greedy, predatory. The rapacious brigands stripped the villagers of all their possessions. Rapport. Emotional closeness, harmony. In team teaching, it is important that all teachers in the group have good rapport with one another. Rapt. Absorbed, enchanted. Caught up in the wonder of the storyteller's tale, the rapt listeners sat motionless, hanging on his every word. Rarefied. Made less dense, of a gas. The mountain climbers had difficulty breathing in the rarefied atmosphere. Raspy. Grating, harsh. The sergeant's raspy voice grated on the recruit's ears. Ratify. Approve formally, confirm, verify. Party leaders doubted that they had enough votes in both houses of Congress to ratify the constitutional amendment. Ratiocination. Reasoning, act of drawing conclusions from premises. While Watson was a man of average intelligence, Holmes was a genius, whose gift for ratiocination made him a superb detective. Rationale. Fundamental reason or justification, grounds for an action. Her need to have some place to hang her earring collection was Dora's rationale for piercing 15 holes in each ear. Rationalize. Give a plausible reason for an action in place of a true, less admirable one, offer an excuse. When David told Gabrielle he couldn't give her a ride to the dance because he had no room in the car, he was rationalizing. Actually, he couldn't stand being cooped up in a car with anyone who talked as much as she did. Raucous. Harsh and shrill, disorderly and boisterous. The raucous crowd of New Year's Eve revelers got progressively noisier as midnight drew near. Rave. Overwhelmingly favorable review. Though critic John Simon seldom has a good word to say about most contemporary plays, his review of All in the Timing was a total rave. Ravel. Fall apart into tangles, unravel or untwist, entangle. A single thread pulled loose, and the entire scarf started to ravel. Ravenous. Extremely hungry. The ravenous dog upset several garbage pails in its search for food. Raze. Destroy completely. Spelling is important. To raise a building is to put it up, to raise a building is to tear it down. Reactionary. Recoiling from progress, politically ultra-conservative. Opposing the use of English in worship services, reactionary forces in the church fought to reinstate the Mass in Latin. Realm. Kingdom, field or sphere. In the animal realm, the lion is the king of beasts. Reaper. One who harvests grain. Death, the grim reaper, cuts down mortal men and women, just as a farmer cuts down the ripened grain. Rebuff. Snub, beat back. She rebuffed his invitation so smoothly that he did not realize he had been snubbed. Rebuke. Scold harshly, criticize severely. No matter how sharply Miss Watson rebuked Huck for his misconduct, he never talked back but just stood there like a stump. Rebuttal. Refutation, response with contrary evidence. The defense lawyer confidently listened to the prosecutor sum up his case, sure that she could answer his arguments in her rebuttal. Recalcitrant. Obstinately stubborn, determined to resist authority, unruly. Which animal do you think is more recalcitrant, a pig or a mule? Recant. Disclaim or disavow, retract a previous statement, openly confess error. Those who can, keep true to their faith, those who can't, recant. Hoping to make Joan of Arc recant her sworn testimony, her English captors tried to convince her that her visions had been sent to her by the devil. Recapitulate. Summarize. Let us recapitulate what has been said thus far before going ahead. Recast. Reconstruct, a sentence, story, etc., fashion again. Let me recast this sentence in terms your feeble brain can grasp, in words of one syllable. You are a fool. Receptive. Quick or willing to receive ideas, suggestions, etc. Adventure-loving Huck Finn proved a receptive audience for Tom's tales of buried treasure and piracy. Recession. Withdrawal, retreat, time of low economic activity. The slow recession of the floodwaters created problems for the crews working to restore power to the area. Recidivism. Habitual return to crime. Prison reformers in the United States are disturbed by the high rate of recidivism. The number of men serving second and third terms in prison indicates the failure of prisons to rehabilitate the inmates. Recipient. Receiver. Although he had been the recipient of many favors, he was not grateful to his benefactor. Reciprocal. Mutual, exchangeable, interacting. The two nations signed a reciprocal trade agreement. Reciprocate. Repay in kind. If they attack us, we shall be compelled to reciprocate and bomb their territory. Recluse. Hermit, loner. Disappointed in love, Miss Emily became a recluse. She shut herself away in her empty mansion and refused to see another living soul. Reconcile. Correct inconsistencies. Become friendly after a quarrel. Each month when we try to reconcile our checkbook with the bank statement, we quarrel. However, despite these monthly lovers' quarrels, we always manage to reconcile. Reconnaissance. Survey of enemy by soldiers, reconnoitering. If you encounter any enemy soldiers during your reconnaissance, capture them for questioning. Recount. Narrate or tell, count over again. A born storyteller, my father loved to recount anecdotes about his early years in New York. Recourse. Resorting to help when in trouble. The boy's only recourse was to appeal to his father for aid. Recrimination. Countercharges. Loud and angry recriminations were her answer to his accusations. Rectify. Set right, correct. You had better send a check to rectify your account before American Express cancels your credit card. Rectitude. Uprightness, moral virtue, correctness of judgment. The Eagle Scout was a model of rectitude. Recumbent. Reclining, lying down completely or in part. The command at ease does not permit you to take a recumbent position. Recuperate. Recover. The doctors were worried because the patient did not recuperate as rapidly as they had expected. Recurrent. Occurring again and again. Richard's recurrent asthma attacks disturbed us and we consulted a physician.